Call this part 8. The title here, wow, has a description. It shows all these places on here. Herod's Palace, Hospital, Judgment Hall, Queen Helena's Palace. These are, I can't even explain this. The Temple of Solomon. Anyhow, it doesn't explain. Anyhow, the title, it says here, Nations in Flux. And below that, the years preceding the creation, do I have this thing on? It's on. The years preceding the creation of the scrolls were extremely tragic and chaotic. Not like now. Likely influencing the creation of the scrolls. Makes sense. Yeah. This might be a little bit longer. We'll jump right into this one. The biblical King Solomon became the ruler of the Jewish nation in about 967 BCE. And I think a friend of mine explained to me this BCE Common Era thing and all that, because it's, if you're talking about Christ, it's offensive, I guess. Solomon, who accumulated great wealth and power, controlled the region west of the Euphrates River. He established Israelite colonies throughout his province to oversee military and commercial matters, and divided his realm into 12 districts. Where's that number 12 again? With Judah a political unit of its own, the nation thrived under Solomon's wise rule. Trade boomed, cities expanded, and fortresses were erected to protect the kingdom. With prosperity and tranquility at hand, Solomon began to build the Holy Temple in Jerusalem, the crowning achievement of his life. Sparing no expense, he imported elegant woods from foreign nations and used only the finest stone and other building materials in the construction. The temple, which took 7 years to complete, is described in the Bible as 180 feet long, 90 feet wide, and 50 feet high. The magnificent structure, overlaid in pure gold, is said to have housed the 2 tablets of the 10 Commandments inside the Ark of the Covenant. Solomon died after 40 years as ruler of Israel. His son Rehoboam, I'll just deal with that, replaced the great king on the throne. After decades of wealth and power, however, Israel now plunged headlong into centuries of tragedy and disaster. Tribes in the northern provinces refused to bend to the new ruler's will. And by 928 BCE, the unified kingdom was split into 2. Israel in the north with Samaria as its capital, and Judah in the south with Jerusalem as its capital. That's interesting. Excuse me. The splintered nation was now at the hands of neighboring predators. Divided, we conquer. We are conquered. In 722 BCE, the Assyrians from Mesopotamia conquered Israel, massacring large numbers of inhabitants and deporting others to regions throughout the Middle East. Meanwhile, Judah fell under Assyrian domination, reduced to a vassal state of the conquerors. I know what that means, but I'm not going to try to describe it. They conquered people. Yet soon the Judeans fell prey to new conquerors from the east, the Babylonians. In 587 BCE, the Babylonians reduced Jerusalem to ruins and destroyed Solomon's holy temple, the center of Jewish life in the region. The Babylonian king, Nebuchadnezzar, deported thousands of Jews to his capital in Babylon, the beginning of the event known in Jewish history as the exile. The Hebrews' fortunes, however, were soon to improve, at least temporarily. Now, wait a minute. The Babylonian king Nebuchadnezzar deported thousands of Jews to Cyrus the Great. In 539 BCE, Cyrus the Persian conquered the entire Middle East. During his 30-year reign, Cyrus was motivated by more than the desire to conquer and subjugate the vanquished. He was a modern thinker with compassion and respect for different cultures and religions. He believed the world was destined for a moral struggle between good and evil. He wished to conquer the entire world in order to bring together all peoples for the triumph of good in the coming final battle. His kingdom ended up spanning the lands of Asia Minor, Babylon, and Lydia, creating the Great Persian Empire. Cyrus believed Yahweh, the God of the Jews, was a good God, and he claimed Yahweh instructed him to rebuild the temple in Jerusalem. The Persian king allowed the Jews in Babylon to return to their native homeland and to reestablish their religion. Not all Jews took up Cyrus's magnanimous offer. Many stayed in Babylon, and others had converted to Babylonian faiths. I believe that is discussed in the Bible. By 516 BCE, the Second Temple had been built, and the Jews enjoyed many political and religious freedoms. Importantly, the reestablishment of the Holy Temple in Jerusalem had transformed Judah from merely a kingdom to a theological state, with a high priest who headed all religious and political affairs of the Jewish community. Persia dominated the region for another 200 years, during which time the Jews maintained their distinct identity. In 332 BCE, Alexander of Macedon, also known as Alexander the Great, a Greek, conquered Persia, and with it Judah, the Persian tribute state. Upon Alexander's sudden death in 323 BCE, the vast territories he had conquered were divided among his leading generals. The Near East was splintered into two. Egypt went to Ptolemy, I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, while Seleucus inherited the Middle East and Mesopotamia. And let's see here, let's show that. This is a painting depicting the fall of Jerusalem at the hands of Nebuchadnezzar II, shown driving the chariot at the top. Kind of an interesting image here. You can see the chariot above. And it has here Jeremiah, who had predicted that Babylon would be conquered, sits in the center of the painting, his scribe at his side. It says here that is Jeremiah in the center of the painting, his scribe at his side. That is immense. Okay. This goes a little further here. All right. The tiny parcel of Judea, as the land was now called, lay uneasily between the rival factions, each of which wanted the territory for its own. Judea first fell under the benevolent control of the Ptolemaic, I still can't pronounce that, Ptolemaic dynasty of Egypt, and then to Seleucid domination. The exchange of the vassal state would repeat time and again between 319 and 302 BCE. Jerusalem switched hands 7 times. Wow. The Jews resented the Greeks more than they had any of their previous overlords. The Greek was seemed barbaric to the Hebrews. Before it talks about vassal state, I mean that's like if you were if we had communities of Muslims here, even though we're not a Muslim nation, as long as those Muslims don't break any laws that we have set, they can do their little Muslim thing in their community or whatever, and still have their own. There's probably more to it than that, but you kind of get the idea. If we're a Protestant area and the Catholics, a Catholic community, well, we'll allow them to do their Catholic thing or whatever and have their whatever, but they can't break our rules. We still dominate them. I think that's what they mean by a vassal state. The Greek way seemed barbaric to the Hebrews, and the Greek gods alien and offensive. That would be interesting. Yet the Greeks generally left the Jews alone, allowing them to run their own affairs in Judea. Basil. The Greeks, to some degree intrigued by the Jewish religion, wanted a copy of the Jewish holy writings for the library at Alexandria, Egypt. They began translating the Torah into Greek, which for the Hebrews became the most significant and enduring event during their time under the Greek yoke. The translated work, called the Septuagint maybe, after the 70 translators needed to complete the task, transformed the regional Jewish religion into a world religion, as the Greek language dominated the Mediterranean world. We're going to talk about the Greek language, but I'll leave that alone. When the Seleucids desecrated the Second Temple in 168 BCE, however, they ignited a Jewish revolt led first by Mattathias of the Hasmonean family, and then by his son Judah the Maccabee, resulting in the restoration of Judean autonomy by the Seleucids. The Seleucid kingdom collapsed in 129 BCE, ushering in rule under the Hasmonean dynasty. Once again, I'm probably mispronouncing these. Which lasted about 80 years. During this time, Jewish life flourished once again, as the kingdom re-expanded near to the boundaries of its heyday during the reign of Solomon. Ultimately, Hasmonean rule became weakened by intense infighting, the result of a bitter sibling rivalry. In about 67 BCE, Hyrcanus II, the high priest, was to assume the Judean throne, but his younger brother, Aristobulus, wanted the position for himself. Aristobulus defeated Hyrcanus in battle and seized control. In turn, the military commander of Edom, a neighboring territory to the south with ties to Hyrcanus, plotted with the former ruler to oust Aristobulus. The pair bested Aristobulus in combat, setting the stage for yet another sovereign power to appear on the scene. This next chapter starts as Roman rule. While the brothers jockeyed for control of Judea, the Roman general Pompey, sensing an easy land grab, swept into the region. Pompey sided with the weaker Hyrcanus, enraging the supporters of Aristobulus in Jerusalem. In 63 BCE, Aristobulus' group took positions inside the fortifications of the Temple Mount. They held out for nearly 3 months against Roman garrisons, but the troops finally shattered the defenses. According to the Jewish historian Josephus, more than 12,000 inhabitants of the city were killed, including priests. However, Pompey ordered that the temple should be left undisturbed and ritual sacrifices allowed to continue. That's interesting. Hyrcanus was made high priest and reinstated as king with limited authority under the Roman governor of Damascus in Syria. The Romans seized control of the region, once again reducing Judea to a vassal state. Many Jews were enraged by the rapid reversal of fortune. In 40 BCE, we're down to 40, the countdown. Antigonus, Aristobulus' son, the Greek name thing, that's a tough group. They're just big on consonants. Aristobulus' son led a revolt to oust his father, now a ruler in name only. And Antigonus' forces captured Aristobulus, and the rebellious son became high priest and king of Judea. His victory, however, was short-lived. In 37 BCE, Herod the Great, a son-in-law of Hyrcanus, crushed Antigonus in bloody combat. Rome appointed Herod king of Judea. The new monarch immediately embarked on an aggressive campaign to eliminate all opposition to his rule. including both Hyrcanus and Aristobulus. Cleaning house. Herod began a massive construction program, building the new cities of Caesarea and Sebaste, new fortresses at Masada and Herodium, wishing to garner the loyalty and support of the Jewish population. Herod launched a remodeling of the Second Temple. Despite this undertaking, as well as other attempts to appease his Jewish subjects, Herod ultimately failed to win them over. 10 years after Herod's death, in 4 BCE, the Romans began to impose tight control over affairs in Judea. A large garrison of troops was stationed in Jerusalem. Roman governors took control of the office of high priest, appointing only those who could be easily manipulated. Isn't that what we do with the CIA and special forces in other countries? We'd go in and plant our guy in there. I guess that's nothing new. Tensions between Jews and Romans finally escalated into full-blown revolt in 66 CE. So now we had before CE, we got down to 4. Notice they haven't mentioned anything else in there. Now we're back to 66 CE. This is before CE, now it's CE. After some event. And because you take Christ out of it, you have no idea what they're talking about. So let's see. Superior Roman forces swept through the land, eliminating resistance, and then in early 70 CE, laying waste to Jerusalem itself. The Second Temple was totally destroyed in the carnage, and an estimated several 100,000 were killed. In 73 CE, the Romans vanquished the remaining Jewish outpost at Masada. Almost done here. Scholars believe it was during these dangerous, chaotic years that the Essenes, back to the Essenes again, abandoned their settlement in Qumran. These were the treacherous times during which the Dead Sea Scrolls were created. The Jews and their religion would survive the devastation inflicted upon them by the Romans. There would be a second ill-fated rebellion in 132 CE, which resulted in the razing of Jerusalem again and the banishment of Jews from the city. Yet through it all, the remaining Jewish community in Judea returned to some degree of normalcy. For then, in the hundreds of thousands of Jews scattered to distant lands in the aftermath of foreign incursions, hope would not be abandoned. We'll leave it at that. Up next is going to be a little bit, what are they made of? Love you, God bless.